One of the first things that I hit on with this idea was that we are not going to be anonymous. I'm going to use faces, I'm going to use names. We need to reclaim this idea that suicide happens to everyone. We know people with depression, we know people who have died by suicide. Many of us have suffered with these thoughts or sometimes with these actions. And so this idea of suicide being a not in my backyard sort of thing, it's not real. We have been anonymous for too long as attempt survivors. We've been reduced to numbers. We've been reduced to silhouettes. My name is Dese'Rae L, and I'm the founder of Live Through This.
If you ask me what Live Through This is, I would say it's this really cool project where there's this woman, Dese'Rae, who's taking photographs, and she's really good at taking photographs of people who are willing to be open about what their suicide attempt was like and what that time period for them was like, and to attach their name to it and not be anonymous.
By telling our stories and sharing everything that we have, we can all learn from each other, and I think we can help each other and hopefully prevent more suicides.
To literally just put yourself out there and say, this is me, that sort of reality breaks all like preconceived notions that I had about myself.
Her project really is just about connecting people in its most basic, original form. You have a conversation. You know, we don't do that anymore.
Is a public health message that says, here are examples, living examples, faces, names, stories, hope. And that's what she's providing us.
I studied psychology in school. I had a lot of experience with depression, losing friends to suicide, my own suicide attempt, and I even went as far as getting into a PhD program so that I could study suicide and self-injury. And for whatever reason, my professors were not on board with that. So I quit the program, moved to New York, taught myself photography. Why do people die by suicide? How can I change that? Why aren't we talking about it? So I wanted to figure out how I could attack this question that I had with my camera instead of with science. How could I do it with art? From the very beginning, I get an email from the attempt survivor, and on my website I say, tell me a little bit about your story. The initial prompt is, tell me your name, how old you are, what you do, and your story as you see fit to tell it.
When we did the interview, it took place in her apartment, and she just put the recorder on and we talked. I mean, it must have lasted almost 2 hours.
And once the conversation started, it flowed. It was the most beautiful avalanche, I guess is a good metaphor I can use.
You know, I don't want them to share any information that they're uncomfortable with sharing. I think it's really important to be safe, for them to feel safe sharing this information.
I mainly just told my story, and she asked me questions at the end. And then afterwards, we went outside, different locations on the street. We tried a couple different things, and she did a portrait of me.
And the level of realness, there's nothing staged in it at all.
It was literally like 30 or 40 feet away from where I tried to kill myself. So like that's always kind of fun to like look at that picture and be like, hey, I'm still here, you know.
I chose to do portraits because I'm a photographer, but also because I think that that's one of the best ways to kind of imbue this idea with humanity. I want to force the viewer to look into the eyes of the portraits of these attempt survivors, because this is something that we shy away from. This idea is, no, look at me and understand that I'm a human and that I could be anybody. I could be your son or your daughter or your neighbor. And I've been through this awful thing, but I'm still here, and this is what happens after. And how do you build a life after that? And how do you struggle after that? And how do you get through it?
It's important because it attaches humanity to it. More than anything else, I mean, if you just have an anonymous thing, that's not real.
Introducing you to real people with real jobs, with real lives, who had experiences or an experience that they got through that doesn't in any way describe who they are, but describes in some ways how strong they are.
Having your picture and name on there takes away the fear of talking about this. It just rips the Band-Aid off in a very healthy way, I think.
We talk about suicide. It's all over TV. It's in the movies. Suicide is everywhere. And I've noticed that even more since I've started doing this project. But the way we talk about it is not productive.
We believe wholeheartedly that if people hear stories of people who've lived through suicidal despair, that it can bring hope. And there's growing evidence to show that. Those kinds of stories turn the tide, change the conversation from let's talk about suicide to let's talk about how we can do something to prevent it.
I've interviewed 110 people. The main thing I've learned is that I do have a community and that I am not alone, which is what I initially set out to tell people. We do have a community. We have people who are living their lives and feeling okay about having had this experience, and some who are still struggling, and then some who are living their lives and they've had this experience and they're like, I'm gonna change some things. There's this community of all kinds of different people just living and being okay and struggling and continuing and being.